In 2012, I came home from a shift selling cars. I'm a therapist. The selling cars part is a longer story. I had already decided to close my practice. I had been telling clients that we were shutting down for weeks. We, I mean me. And then the phone rang. Welcome to the Clinical CEO podcast. Build the business your future self will thank you for. Welcome back. This is the Clinical CEO episode 2. And if you're here, it means that last week landed on you hard enough that you came back. And I want you to know that I don't take that lightly. Last week, I told you that you built yourself a job. I promised you a story today. This is the story. Okay, so it's 2012. I'm 4 years into the business that eventually became Court Counseling Institute. At this point, it was called the Anger Managers, which is the name I gave it in 2008 when I registered it with my last $50 I had in my bank account. I'll tell you that story another time. Today, all you need to know is that by 2012, the business exists, it has clients, it has some referral partners, but it's not paying me enough to live on. So I'm working in car sales full time. I want you to sit on that for a second because I know what some of you are thinking. Car sales, a therapist, and I can hear some of you judging me already. That's all right. Judge away. I was a single mother with a daughter to feed, and car sales paid good commission, and I was really good at it too, so it kept the lights on. It also taught me more about sales, about closing, about reading a room, about handling objections than any business program I could have paid for, although I couldn't have paid for any programs back then. The relevant part for today is that I was working full-time in car sales. I was seeing therapy clients on my evenings, my weekends, my days off, any scrap of time that I had. I had not taken a vacation in years. I had missed family events I cannot get back. I was burning the candle at both ends, and I had been doing that for so long that I had forgotten what it felt like to not be tired. I want you to understand what tired meant at that point. Not the tired of a busy week, not the tired of a hard month, a tired that had become the weather of my life. I would wake up already tired. I would get to the dealership already tired. I would finish at the dealership and drive to whatever space I was using to see clients. And I would sit across from a woman who was suffering, and I would find clinical presence to be with her. And then the session would end, and I would drive home, and I would try to find scraps of time for my child. I would try to get the laundry done, try to clean the house. And most of the time I just fell asleep before I had even eaten. And then the next day and every day, 4 years, it would just start again. It was like Groundhog Day. And in 2012, I looked at the two paths in front of me and I did the math. On the car sales side, I could see a clear path to $300,000 a year. I was already performing well at the dealership. I was getting repeat customers. I was getting referrals. The math of car sales was simple for me. Sell more cars, make more money. There's no ceiling imposed by a licensing body. There's no ethical complexity about the number of clients I could handle. There's no cap on what I could earn in a year if I was willing to put in the hours, which I was. $300,000 a year to a single mom who had spent years in poverty. That's not just some small number. That's incredibly enticing when you're in that space. It meant my daughter could go to the dentist without me having to figure out which bill I wasn't going to pay that month. It was a vacation, maybe. It was maybe even a savings account after I paid off tens of thousands of dollars for the school debt. It was the thing I had been working toward my whole adult life, which was the feeling of just not being afraid when I opened up my mailbox. And then on the therapy side of things, I could see more years of the same grind. Build slowly, fight for every referral, explain court-mandated programs to lawyers who had no understanding of what I was actually doing, compete with established clinics for clients who did not know I existed, spend my evenings in therapy sessions or paperwork instead of with my kid, and keep doing the exact same thing that was slowly grinding me into a powder of an existence. So I decided to close my practice. I didn't make the decision in one single moment. It built up after months, maybe even years. But once I made that decision, I started to act on it. I started answering the phone and telling people we're no longer accepting clients, that we were closing down. Thank you for calling. Here's a referral to someone else. I was starting to get pretty good at those calls. I had a script in my head. I'd thank the person for reaching out. I'd tell them that I was transitioning out of my private practice, and I'd give them the name of a colleague who would be a good fit. I'd wish them well, and I'd hang up. And every call, a little piece of me died because that practice was my baby. I had put so many years of effort into that practice, and to be telling people that I was shutting down was as if someone had passed away. I had to grieve it. But as horrible as that feeling felt, I knew that I had to do something to get myself and my daughter out of the poverty we were living in. And then one night, I finished a shift at the dealership and I drove home. And I parked my car in my above ground parking lot in my building. It was February in Toronto, so it was like super cold. Yeah, and only a way that Canadians can recognize the cold. And I was getting out of my car and my phone rings. It was a lawyer, one of the lawyers I'd worked with for years. He was one of my earliest referral partners, the kind of person who knew my work before I had learned to explain it. And he was frantic. He's like, Jessica, my client just called me and told me that you're no longer taking clients. What is going on? And I told him exactly what was going on. I told him I could not sustain the long hours anymore. I told him I could not work 7 days a week anymore. I told him I needed to spend time with my kid. I told him I was over it. I told him that I was over the hustle of trying to fill out my clinic and try to build a business that would let me quit my car sales job. I was done. And I remember standing in that parking lot beside my car because I didn't want to actually go in the building and lose signal because I wanted to talk to him, even though I was freezing my ass off, and giving him this raw version, the version like nobody heard from me. Everybody else around me heard, yeah, I've decided to transition into whatever. And I gave it to him. I gave him the real version and he listened. He didn't interrupt me. He let me say the whole spiel. And then he started talking. And he told me how much the industry needed what I was doing. He told me how much he needed it in his practice. He told me how many clients he had over the years who did not fit into a traditional court-mandated program and how he had sent them to me because I was the one who would actually work with them instead of turning them away. And then he said something completely off the left side that I was not expecting. He told me that if I kept my practice open, that he would send me every mandated client of his. He told me that he would send every lawyer, every crown attorney, every judge, every court staff member that he knows who's looking for these programs to my program. He told me that he would make it a personal project of his to keep my practice full, but that I had to keep the practice open. Wow, that was big. So I told him I'd think about it. I appreciated his call and we hung up. And then I stood there in the parking lot, freezing my butt off in February. I don't even know how long I stood there, but I stood there a really long time, just dazed by the conversation. And I want to tell you what I was feeling because it is the feeling I want you to know you are allowed to feel if you're at a crossroads in your own practice right now. I was relieved, not because the call saved my business. The call did not save my business. He did refer me a lot of clients after that, but it still didn't save my business. That call gave me the option to save it, but the call itself did not save anything. I was relieved because for the first time in years, I had hope that the thing I had been building for years, putting all of myself into, was not going to end up just being a bad business gone wrong. Someone had finally told me out loud that what I was doing mattered, that it was worth saving, and that there was maybe even a path to get there. And I was relieved because I realized that the reason I had decided to close the business in the first place was not because it was a bad business. The reason I had decided to close it was because I had been running it like a job instead of a business. I had been trading hours for dollars. I had no systems. I had no leverage. I had no team. I had no referral machine. I was the whole business. Me. The business was me sitting in a chair, talking to one client at a time in between car sales shifts. Of course, I was exhausted. I was running a job, and no amount of hustle was going to get me out of that exhaustion. Because hustle doesn't solve structure. Hustle makes structural problems worse. I want to say that again. Hustle does not solve structure. Hustle makes structural problems worse. Hustle's the thing you do when you haven't figured out that the problem is not effort. The problem is architecture. The architecture of what I had built was a job. No amount of additional effort was going to turn it into a business, because jobs and businesses are not the same thing. They're different things entirely. I could have worked 8 days a week and the business still would not have become a business, because a business is not a job plus more hours. A business is a structure in which other people, systems, and products do the work that was previously only possible for you to do. I hadn't built any of that. I built a caseload and I attended that caseload, and I had been calling it a business the whole time. And so I made a decision that night, standing in the parking lot with cold fingers and toes. And the decision was not that I was going to keep the practice open. That was part of it. The real decision was, if I was going to keep it open, I was going to do it properly. I was going to do it in a way where real, sustainable growth was possible. I was going to stop trading my hours for dollars, and I was going to stop being the whole business. And I guess I didn't know it at the time, but I decided right there that I was going to build a business instead of a job. I want to talk about what that actually meant in practice, because a decision like that sounds abstract when you describe it in a sentence, but it's not abstract. It had specific consequences that rolled out over the next several years. The first consequence was that I had to change my relationship to the clinical hours I was putting in. I had been treating every clinical hour as revenue producing, which it was, absolutely. But I had not been treating my non-clinical hours as work as well. The 4 hours that I spent every week on, oh my God, so many administrative tasks like communication with the clients, marketing, referral relationships, so many things. I wasn't counting any of that. I was treating it like it was just overhead, or like my dues into the business, as stuff that I just had to do before I could actually do the real work. So I flipped it completely. I started treating the non-clinical hours as the real work and the clinical hours as part of the business that I had already built. The clinical hours did not need my strategic attention. They ran themselves. I had amazing referral partners. I was full, and they had been running themselves for 4 years. The part of the business that needed my strategic attention was everything else. And I had been starving that part of my business all along without ever knowing it. The second consequence was that I stopped answering every call myself. I stopped being the person who explained what we did to every prospective client. I started building the intake process that would let someone else do that, or eventually let a system do that. Now, it took years to fully build. I didn't hire my first assistant right away, but I did start that night thinking of myself as someone who was building toward not being the person in front of every transaction. The third consequence, and this is the one that really took the longest, was that I had to do my own work on why I had built myself a job instead of a business. I had not built a job by accident. I had built a job because I was a clinician who had not been trained how to run a clinical practice. I thought that a clinical practice is a one-on-one transaction by design. I had also built myself a job because somewhere within me, I did not yet fully trust that I, Jessica Echeverri, could build anything bigger. The woman who builds a 300 client operation is different from the woman who sees 6 clients a week out of a rented room. I had to become the first woman so that I could even see who that other woman was. And that took me years of therapy and real work. I'm telling you this because I don't want you to think that my parking lot decision was a moment that fixed everything. It wasn't. The parking lot decision was a moment I started building towards the things that I have now. 14 years later, I'm sitting here in Cali, Colombia, recording a podcast, running 5 businesses across 2 countries, and the Court Counseling Institute serves thousands of clients a year multinationally. None of that existed in 2012. None of that existed because of the phone call. All of that exists because of what I did with that phone call 14 years ago. The phone call gave me permission to stay. The 14 years of work after the phone call is what turned staying into something worth doing. And honestly, it just gave me permission to see this thing that I had built was worth saving. A lot of you are listening to this episode right now, and you're in some version of the parking lot. You might not be deciding to close a practice exactly, but you're deciding slowly over weeks and months and years to stay small, to let it stay what it is, to stop fighting for it, because fighting for it is exhausting and the growth does not seem to come. And maybe you're just not cut out for the big version of this. And I want to tell you what that lawyer told me in my parking lot. What you built is worth saving. It's not worth saving in its current form. The current form of my business in 2012 was a job. It was not worth saving. But the thing underneath the current form, the clinical mission, the clients, the referral relationships, proof that you can actually do this work, all of that is worth saving. It just needs a different structure around it. You're not building the wrong thing. You're running the right thing with the wrong structure. I want to tell you one more thing before I close this episode, because I think it's a part that my listeners need to hear most. And it's a part I almost never say out loud. I was not strong that night in the parking lot. I was not brave. I was not making a visionary decision. I was 30-something years old. I had been exhausted for years. I was about to give up, and I was just a woman who happened to get a phone call that made her reconsider. And that's it. The reason I'm telling you this is that most of the stories you hear from business owners make them sound like they were brave or a visionary or decisive at the moment everything turned around. And to be honest, that's almost never true. Most of the time, what actually happens is someone's just at the end of their rope and something small intervenes and they make a different choice than the one that they were about to make. And they spend the next decade making a new choice and it pays off. You don't have to be brave to make the change that I'm asking you to make this season. You don't have to be a visionary. You don't even have to be decisive. You just have to be willing to hear a piece of information that interrupts that pattern of behaviors that you have been doing. And you have to be willing to let that information change what you do next. This show, I am making it to interrupt. I want to interrupt those patterns. I am the lawyer on the other end of the phone call telling you that what you built is worth saving. I am telling you that the reason it feels unstable is not that you are not cut out for this. The reason it feels unstable is because the structure that you have built was never going to get you where you want to go. And that's fixable. And I'm going to show you how to fix it. But you have to not hang up. The job of the show is to help you change the structure. So here's my ask for the week. I'm going to have ask every week. If last week and this week have landed on you, go to www.jessicaecheverri.com and download the Foundations Curriculum Overview. It's free. It will tell you exactly what the structural shift from clinician to CEO actually looks like step by step. It's the curriculum that I wish somebody had handed me in that parking lot in 2012. It would have saved me the next, 5, 6, 7 years of trial and error. You can find the link in the show notes. And if you're not ready to make a change yet, that's okay. Come back next week. Next week, we're going to talk about something nobody in the industry wants to talk about out loud, which is that every single one of us who have got into this industry, this beautiful helping industry, is carrying something. Every one of us, including me. And I'm going to tell you how that affects the way you're running your practice, whether you've noticed it or not. This is the Clinical CEO, and I'm Jessica Echeverri. Build the practice your future self will thank you for.